So very early on, Gentile Christians began to outnumber the Jewish constituents within the early church, and it wasn't too long before the church was basically entirely Gentile Christian. And what this demonstrated was that very early on, the sentiments of replacement theology was the idea that Judaism was incompatible. That was the message that was being kind of conveyed by the early church leaders' decisions to expunge any element or vestiges or semblances of law-keeping or Jewish lifestyle. I know there were other factors as well. They didn't want to be persecuted right alongside the Jews by the emperors who couldn't tell the difference very early on between Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians, because they both looked the same. They both attended synagogue. They both followed after the commandments of Moses, etc. But as the persecutions began to heat up by the Roman leaders, right, the Caesars, etc., then the Gentile Christians wanted to make a break and say, look, Mr. Emperor, we're not Jews. Don't persecute us as Jews. We're different from Jews. We believe in Jesus. They don't. And that was one of the marked differences. And so Paul's writings were used very, very early on, even as early as the late first century by a church leader by the name of Marcion, to try and draw this dichotomy and difference and put up a wall between the Jewish synagogue, which had rejected Jesus wholesale, and the emerging Gentile Christians who were embracing Jesus as the Messiah. And so we can see then that these sentiments about no need for a Jew to hold on to the cultural vestiges of Judaism once he embraced the new covenant became the cultural norm in the Gentilized versions of the church. Why do you want to hold on to that form of religion which rejects Jesus, which represents that which is the shadow, the mere shadow? Even we can add the word mere there for emphasis. Why do you want to hold on to that which is obviously been proven to be deficient and defective? They have their it's what we psychologists refer to as othering. It's us versus them. They have their beliefs and we have our beliefs, and our beliefs are that Jesus is Messiah and their belief is that he isn't, and therefore whose side are you going to take, right? Kind of a no-brainer when it came to Gentile Christians. All right, so let's keep reading. So what I go on to say is that in the end, it appears that all four traditional Christian views that I presented in my paper, so we got Pastor Piper, gotQuestions.org, MacArthur, and Guzik, all four of them more or less agree with one another in this way. And what I talk about when I say agree, I don't mean that they sat down and had some powwow session and said, hey, let's compare notes. It's actually more simple than that. They didn't have to do that. It's that within Christianity, there's already this shared narrative as far as history when it comes to why we don't keep the Torah anymore. There's two, in my experience as a Messianic Jew, let me interject for a moment. I've kind of distilled the question of why don't we keep the Torah? I've distilled that question into two answers. In my experience and research into this question, if we were to take a national poll survey or a Pew survey or something like that, and ask a general question to Gentile Christians or just church-going folk. We don't have to distinguish between Jewish and Gentile, just people who attend church and call themselves Christian. Why do you think, or why don't you keep the Torah anymore? Why has Christianity taken the stance that they do, where they feel that the Torah is no longer relevant? Why is that taught from the pulpit so freely and easily and readily and repeatedly? And the general answers that I have received in my 25 years of being a Christian is I've distilled the answers into two general camps. One of these camps is, the answer is, we don't keep the Torah because we're no longer under the law anymore, and all of its various answers, like Jesus fulfilled it, he did it so we don't have to, it was the shadow, Jesus is the type, he's the reality, they all pointed to him, something to that effect.